Welcome to our September 11th Mount Shasta City Council meeting. Please join me in the flag salute.
Councilmember Ingstrom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stearns. Here. Councilmember Sackleth.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Mayor Mortar.
Here. Okay, as Kathy's going back to get the sign-up sheet, if there are those of you in the audience who would like to share a comment with us about an item that's not on the agenda, you're welcome to do so. And you have nothing, okay, 3 minutes to tell us what's on your mind. Is there anyone who's interested in commenting? Okay, thank you. I'd like to change the order of the agenda tonight to have item number 11, which is the city's bid process and protocols, moved to item number 9 right after the public hearing on the accessory dwelling units. So we'll do that, and if I forget, remind me. Yeah, it'll bump everything down then. Okay. Let's begin with staff comments. Do you have something for us, Bruce?
Not at this time, thank
No.
you.
Okay. Any other reports from staff? Rob?
If I may, through the chair, I can give an update on the 2017 sidewalk replacement project. Crews started today with the removal of some of the trees. Council recall this is a phased approach at removing the liquid amber trees, replacing them with more appropriate tree species. This is an ongoing effort in the downtown area to replace the sidewalks, eliminate the trip hazards, and replace these trees with newer ones. So that project will be started today. Demo will start probably into this week or beginning next week, and demolition of the existing sidewalk.
Okay.
This is a RSTP funded project. So, yep.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I noticed that there was quite a bit of hubbub out on the sidewalk this afternoon. I didn't talk to anybody because I was rushing by, but there were rose petals being scattered and people really concerned about the trees, I guess. So I think it's important that people understand that we're doing it because of the trip hazards associated with the sidewalks. We've had several complaints about the condition of our downtown sidewalks, both from locals and visitors to our town. My question is, do we have a way to, or did we, notify businesses that this was going to happen to minimize the shock factor and explain to them, perhaps what we were up to and why? I know you have an incredibly busy schedule, Rod, a lot of things on your plate. Right. I also understand the shock factor to people that we could possibly minimize with some advance information next time. Yeah. Any comment on that?
Give a letter out to all the business owners downtown prior to last week. It didn't happen, and so it went out today.
I see, okay. And thank you. We can always, improve our improve our communication. Can you hear me, folks out there? Okay. I was delighted to hear today from Kathy Wilson, our Deputy City Clerk, that she's going to begin putting out a quarterly newsletter from City Hall to our residents, and I'm very happy about that, and I understand she's going to be running it by all of the leadership team, the department heads, to see what sort of information is coming up, as well as that which has already happened that we could explain more fully. So I think it'd be a good opportunity to share information like this that is coming up so people can better understand it. And I think the first issue will be sometime later this fall. Am I correct? Okay, yeah. And it goes out to all of our utility customers, all residents. And
I haven't planned that far ahead. I don't know that it's going to go out to everybody. What I'm envisioning right now is there will definitely be a copy of it on the website.
yeah,
And then for the first publication, I'm thinking about 250 copies, and we'll see how that goes. And then eventually, maybe down the road, it'll be something that we send out to people. This is just going to be a trial run for this first newsletter.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll speak up.
So what she said was she hasn't got all the details ironed out yet, but she's planning on an initial run of about 250 of them and see what the response is, because it is a cost to the city, and then we'll go from there to decide whether it's something that, and we'll put it on the website. We'll go from there to decide if we continue it or to what degree. I have a few other things, but are there other comments from city council members
About any subject?
about any subjects?
Okay, so I'd like to comment on this note that I assume we all received from Jason Coaster. I hear similar verbal descriptions of this scenario where commercial or apartment owners are reducing their sewer bill by reducing their irrigation, and the point is that it seems like they're being charged for sewer effluent based on irrigation. So
Based on volume of water?
based on volume of water, and they turn off the irrigation and their sewer bill goes down. So he's a little blunt about it in this letter, but that is the general consensus I deal with in my travels around Mount Shasta. So it leads me to think that we do need to look at the formula for commercial and apartment complexes and maybe make it similar to what it is for residences based on the sewer. The sewer effluent would have to be based on non-irrigation months. Something that is more accurate with respect to what is going into the sewers from these places.
So question, is this a commercial,
It's an apartment complex.
is it considered for commercial, for calculation purposes? Residential?
Apparently so.
The question, if I may rephrase it at this point, is are apartment and townhouse complexes considered residential or commercial? This is a follow-up to the rate study issues.
They're commercial.
They are commercial. So they have the opportunity to come in and ask for a reduction in their fee based on landscaping, and you've been doing those follow-ups. In fact, I think I was told, when I inquired about it, I was told by Rhonda at our front desk last week that it was either 33 or 34 of the possible 300 and some businesses, commercial businesses we have in town, have requested that we go out and that we adjust their bills based on landscaping.
Okay, so would Jason be able to get a discount from the $540 after proving that irrigation is leading to the big difference?
I really can't answer that.
Okay.
I would have to look at his specific usage. I believe he was one that submitted
Oh, he
a
did?
landscape
Okay.
request that has been processed, and so he should be getting a credit. but I can't speak to the exact numbers. I
Okay. So,
processed 30 of them, so.
but going forward, what happens going forward? You know, if he were to turn his sprinklers back on, would you revert to the old formula, or will you factor in an adjustment for that irrigation going forward?
The landscape adjustment only applies May through September, so beyond that, they will just, and I believe they're, I believe in the non-irrigation months, I believe all commercial accounts resort to the 90-10.
Right, right,
So they'll still be getting a 10% reduction year-round.
right. That's fine. I'm just saying,
So,
does the commercial account have to apply for that irrigation adjustment every month?
no, once a year.
Once a year, okay.
Once a year, earlier the better. That way we can process it before the irrigation season begins. And then we can apply that credit every single month from May through September.
So I've been telling people if they take the time to come and see you for this adjustment, that they'll probably be pretty happy. So it sounds like about 30 odd accounts have come by. Okay.
That was as of last week, I believe. Okay, thank you. Barbara, you have something?
Yeah, since we're heading off to another league conference, I want to share what I learned at the last league meeting before I head off. So I just want to,
The League of Cities you're talking about?
League of California Cities, yeah. So just, if you'll bear with me, just a couple sentences. So, if I can read this. The Brown Act declares the legislature's intent. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people in delegating authority do not give the public servants, their public servants, the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. To me, I think that's an important pledge for council members, sitting alongside our Pledge of Allegiance, that we are public servants, and it is that's basically the core of the Brown Act, is that we're here to inform the public, and we don't withhold information from them. We discourage closed-door meetings, et cetera. We want to make sure that the public is properly informed.
Thank you. Is there a specific concern you have? Or
No, I just
a
wanted to share
reminder?
that as a reminder that we're here as public servants. We're here to serve our community, the entire community. Brown Act is as not everyone knows, is about having open meetings and making sure that you have the information available to you.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
We, excuse me, we go through our busy day and sometimes we forget things that are important to us. Today is the 16th anniversary of 9/11, and I think as a council we ought to acknowledge that our hearts are with the families and those that are survived, and that our sympathy still goes out towards them. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Paul. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank all of our first responders in our local community and throughout the country, as well as those who sometimes put their life in the hands of disasters to also respond to help their neighbors. It was a sobering occasion and one that it's an opportunity to feel gratitude for the work that particularly our first responders do, and all the volunteers in the hurricane hit areas. It's been a very a difficult time, and one where, like you said, Paul, we can thank those who are working on behalf of others. Tim, do you have anything? have one item that we haven't touched on, and that is a need for what I believe is a special city council meeting that I'm hoping we can schedule for Monday, at which point we can approve. Why am I having trouble tonight? Too close. What are you saying, Eileen? It's echoing. Echoing. How's this? Is this better? Actually, yours is best. I don't know. Yours is better than the rest of them. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, I'll try and keep the P's to a minimum. Okay. Crystal Geyser, final EIR. I would like to schedule a meeting. I'd like to know if city council members are available for a special meeting on Monday, should we need to do that, to formally submit our response during the Planning Commission meeting on the 20th. It may be that we don't need to do so until the Board of Supervisors meets, but I'd like to be prepared. Wow.
Be ready.
I'd like to be ready in case we, that is the mechanism we need. Thank you. I love it.
I apologize, I don't understand the purpose of the proposed meeting. I'm apologizing, but asking, I still don't understand the purpose of the proposed special meeting on next Monday.
Sure. Let me try and do a better job to clarify.
And if there's any work that has to be done or reading that has to be done before then, remember that 3 of us are going to be at the
I'm
the
well aware of
league
that.
conference and
Right.
not likely to be reading anything before Monday.
I understand that.
So what?
So after the draft EIR was released, we had N-Plan review the document, prepare a draft for us, and we reviewed that and we signed a response as a council to that. Now there's an opportunity, and I believe a requirement that we address something to the county about our feeling about the adequacy of the EIR.
Is the final out at this
The
point?
final is out.
Okay, key fact that I didn't understand.
Okay.
It's before the county on the 20th. So you're saying that we need to go in to be prepared for public comment? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that that's a possibility. We're still inquiring and haven't gotten final response. We don't know whether we need to have it by the time the Planning Commission meets or whether we don't need to have it until the Board of Supervisors decides about it. So if we need to have it by the Planning Commission meeting, which is next Wednesday, we need to conduct a special meeting. And I'm just suggesting that we find out if we're available. Should we need to do that, City Manager Bruce, you, I, and Barbara Wagner will all be at the League of Cities meeting this week. We can call the meeting between now and then, but it's this opportunity now that we have to make sure that all of us are available should we need to schedule it. Does that make sense?
So what I understand is the final EIR for Crystal Geyser has been issued. And the Planning Commission, the Siskiyou County Planning Commission is going to be taking a look at that next Wednesday,
They're taking public comment.
taking public comment next Wednesday, and then it's going to the Board of Supervisors when? And will the public comment period be open after next Wednesday or not?
Well, that's what, maybe Juliana can clarify, but that's what I don't have an answer to at this point.
Just a quick point of clarification, the Siskiyou County Planning Commission.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Rod pointed that out. City
Yeah.
Mount Shasta Planning Commission is not going to be reviewing
Yes.
this, it's the
So,
county.
thank you, thank you.
There you go.
Yes, we have inquiries in to clarify this, but we don't have responses yet. So my intent tonight is just to query each of you about your availability for Monday evening at 5:30 here, in case we need to have a special meeting to approve our input, our response to the EIR, our input to the county. And we'll know more information later in the week once we get responses from N-Plan as well as the procedural aspect from the county. So is there anyone who's not available next Monday night, should we decide to do this?
I am physically available at 5:30 next Monday night if I have to be,
We have to be.
but it's not going to do me much good to be physically present if I haven't reviewed the final EIR before that time.
Understand, and we should have a letter from staff, hopefully N-Plan, in hand, and we don't know. There's just too many things. So I understand your dilemma. I have the same dilemma. We'll have to do the best we can. If the answer is that we have to have something by the 20th, we'll have to do the best we can.
Okay, and when did the final come out? Number one.
Friday? Was it Friday? Wednesday.
Okay, and has City of Mount Shasta already contacted N-Plan to review and comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody not available, should we need to meet on Monday?
And if we need more time to read, we can meet Tuesday also, right? It doesn't have to be on a Monday.
You can't meet here on Tuesday because Planning Commission's meeting here on Tuesday.
But we can meet somewhere else.
Okay, you can.
You could. I would not be present,
Okay.
so I'm hoping,
I'm just.
yeah, I'm hoping. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll stay tuned. Okay, any other last staff comments or council comments? Okay, then let's move on to the consent agenda. Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes of the August 28th, 2017 regular city council meeting. B, approval of Brown Act committee minutes for the beautification committee of June 14th, 2017. C, approval of disbursements and accounts payable for 8/28 and 8/31, 2017. Total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending August 27th, 2017. And D, actuarial services for pension, Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB 68 reports, resolution number CCR 17-59. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move that the council approve the consent agenda numbers A, B, C, and D as read.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you. Okay, we'll move now to the public hearing regarding the second reading of our ordinance number 6, amending Title 18, Chapter 22 of the City of Mount Shasta's Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units. May we have the staff report?
Sure. So it's the second reading of CCO 17-4, I think, or 6. 6, no changes since the last meeting because that wasn't requested in the last meeting. We're going to be releasing the public hearing for the fee set. Hopefully it'll be the first meeting of October, so we'll be setting that permit fee then with that resolution. We're looking at a permit fee price of about $235. It's a one-time fee for an accessory dwelling unit, which accounts for my time as well as building inspection. And I'm just going to open it up for questions from the council, since there was no changes since last meeting.
Is there any discussion from council?
Yeah, a quick reading from the submittal packet. So an accessory dwelling unit can be detached from the main house, but it also can be, you can take your current house and divide it up into accessory dwelling units. Is that what I read?
As long as you have an exterior, well, so it has to be a certain portion of the livable space, which is the regular house, but if you did divide up part of your space, we would have to reduce that. There's some calculations I have to do in there, but you are able to do that as long as there's an exterior entrance. So it has to be a separate entrance, has to be closed off from the rest of the house.
Okay.
Has to be its own unit.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I do have two minor amendments that are simply for clarification and do not change the content of the ordinance. One would be on page 36 of the agenda packet at section 8.22.060, sub B. And this is, it says, in order to approve an administrative use permit under section 18.22.050 to waive required dwelling unit parking, comma, the planning department shall find that additional or new on-site parking would be detrimental, comma, and that granting the waiver will meet the purposes of this chapter. I would propose adding after the word detrimental the phrase to the purpose of this chapter 18.22. So
What does that do for you?
well, when you say find that additional or new on-site parking would be detrimental to what? So by adding the phrase to the purpose of the chapter, this chapter 18.22 clarifies.
Does this require what does this require if we were to
You would have to amend the ordinance as presented.
It would not require further reading. It's because it is simply a clarification of what it means to be detrimental.
Okay, and do you have another change?
Yes, I have
proposal?
another small change, and that would be 18.22070 sub A. This is the definition of accessory dwelling unit, where on the fourth line it says, an accessory dwelling unit includes the following, and it has 1 and 2. 1 being an efficiency unit, 2 being a manufactured home. So I think we're not limiting the accessory dwelling unit to those items. So I suggest that it read, an accessory dwelling unit includes, comma, but is not limited to, comma, the following, 1 and 2. Again, simply for clarification.
So, are you moving?
Yes, I'm making a request, making a motion that we amend the ordinance with those two minor clarifications.
And is there a second?
I'll second from.
Okay. Council discussion?
What does this do to the time period? Does it do anything?
No.
Okay.
Because these are simply minor clarifications, we can still adopt the ordinance as amended tonight.
Mr. Kenny, do you have any comment?
Well, certainly the last change doesn't change anything, because it just states it doesn't change the meaning at all. When you make a substantial change to an ordinance, it requires another reading. I don't believe either of these would be considered a substantial change or a substantive change.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to, we've already heard public.
You have to do it again?
My crib sheet doesn't tell me that. I'm sorry. Apparently, I'm misinterpreting this. So for the second reading, though we got no comments at the first public hearing, we still open it. We still open it. Okay. I'll need to amend my cheat sheet here. I'd love to hear from those of you in the audience if you have any comments to offer about accessory dwelling units. Yes, sir. You have to come up, please. You have to come up and introduce yourself, please. Just tell us who you are.
Hold off on the P's as well here.
I'm sorry.
Hold off on the P's as well here. Yeah, my name's
And the
Ulysses.
Q's.
And the Q's. My name's Ulysses McEwen. I'm just a new resident here. I may be assisting with a renovation to an accessory unit, so I just had some questions about the permitting. So if the new changes were to be approved, the supplemental permit for the planning department would be effective October 1st?
So the resolution for the fee would be 30 days after the fee is established. That hasn't been established at this time. We technically already have these rules in place because we follow state regulation because our current ordinance is out of compliance. So we're basically confirming that we're okay with the state's rules. So technically these rules are already in place,
Okay,
but the fee will not be in place for like another 30 days.
got it. And if I were to submit plans next week, would they require a parking space or no?
So we can't legally require a parking space if you meet certain criteria.
Okay,
So we would apply that to your case. So if you're within, I believe it's half a mile, it's listed in here specifically.
yeah, it's a half mile within public transportation or a historic building. Yeah.
Yeah, or a car sharing facility, we would apply that to that case,
Is that one or the other, or do I have to meet both of those?
one or the other.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing then, and if I'm reading my crib sheet correctly.
Closing the public comment. We already closed the public hearing. At any rate.
Okay. We're closing the public comment and the public hearing. And now, if I'm correct, we do a roll call. Do we not?
We have a motion pending.
Yes. And a second.
For the amendments, you have to approve the amendments before you can approve.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so all those in favor of the amendments as proposed?
Aye.
Unanimously, okay. And now, do we have a roll call vote?
Move adoption of ordinance number CCO 17-6.
Yes.
Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta, amending Title 18, Chapter 22 of the City of Mount Shasta Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. I don't know who Robert was, but Robert's rules and I don't always align very well.
I thought we were doing Rosenberg's anyway.
I'm sorry?
We're under Rosenberg's, not Roberts.
Oh, well, Mr. Rosenberg and I don't always align either. Okay, I'd like then to move to the item that is number 11 on your agenda, discussion regarding the city's bid process and city council protocols. Report by Bruce Pope, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Mortar. The city manager recommended the city council review the established city orders, chapter 3.50, and the city council protocols, and that the city council either amend as the council may deem appropriate or affirm the validity of the present city ordinance regarding the bid processing and the attached city protocols. This grows out of our action of the city council on August 28th when the Public Works Department brought forth to this council for approval a contract to replace windows in City Hall buildings. The council, this had been put out to bid. Staff followed the established policy of the City Council on bid processes. We had a contractor respond. We had another interested contractor who chose not to respond. And we brought this before the council. The council, by a 5-0 vote, approved awarding of the contract to the bidder, which was Selig Construction. And on the next morning, Tuesday, the 29th, the Public Works Director, based on the action of the City Council, issued a letter to Selig Construction to proceed with the project. They were the approved bidder. Later, Wednesday afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Stearns discovered, I'm not sure how, but he can clarify that, that a North State Glass Company did not receive a notice of the bid, indicating, I believe, that they would have been interested in bidding. We don't, if you look at our processes, we do not go around and notify individual contractors. Our process is to publish this in conformance with state law for 2 weeks' notice in the paper of local circulation. Additionally, we place notices with the Shasta County Builders Exchange in hopes of getting a better set of bids that would reduce our price and get us higher quality contractors. And we, Public Works Department, followed that process. So any bidding process you have, there will always be, hypothetically at least, somebody who didn't get the notice, didn't see the notice, didn't respond in time, whatever. And the council takes action on what you have in front of you, which you did. Councilmember Stearns, or Mayor Pro Tem Stearns more correctly, contacted me and said that he wanted the council to be able to reconsider the item. I said I thought reconsideration under the circumstances would be inappropriate. One, we had no guarantee that North State would even submit a proposal, plus we had no idea whether it would be more competitive than the proposal that you had approved, and we ran the risk of, one, losing the approved contractor, and two, delaying the process to where we could potentially end up with damage from rain in the buildings. And so I felt it was more appropriate, we'd gone through the process, stay with it. The Mayor Pro Tem Stearns also said he wanted to rescind his vote, which I was not, a process I was not familiar with. So I contacted the city attorney. City attorney said that, described how, under our rules, how a council member can rescind the vote. So the issue here is, at the time that the Mayor Pro Tem and I discussed this, the letter had gone out. I felt staff had complied with council direction. Technically, the contract had not been signed. I had been directed to sign it by the council, but I had not signed it. At that point, I decided that it was best in the interest of the city, and I signed the contract. By signing that contract, I made rescission of the, or reconsideration of the question impractical. And that's, so what I feel we should be doing here, if the council feels that our bid process is inadequate, that is clearly a policy decision, and that's why you people are elected. Staff does not set policy, and staff does not change policy. I would be very upset if my public works directors decided, well, that's just council policy. I don't care about that. I've got a better idea. It's not how we do business. So I made the decision. It was my decision. I made it. By doing that, I interfered with the ability of the council to reconsider it. But I felt the council had acted, and that was the appropriate action. I believe the Mayor Pro Tem probably disagrees with me, and that's fine. If you want to amend the process, please feel free to do so.
That's
And-
not the issue that's before us tonight, so we don't need to go down what happened in the past tonight.
Okay, I'd like to ask council members if you have questions of Bruce before we comment. Just questions of clarification, then we'll go to public comment, then we'll have discussion.
What I understand is on the agenda tonight is not reconsideration issue because that was taken away from the council as city manager mentioned. What is before the council tonight is whether section 3.50.120, which is on page 37 of our agenda packet.
Page 37? Of the agenda packet or the protocols?
I have it, well, no, actually,
It's an
not,
attachment, is it not?
It says 3 of 7 and 4 of 7, so it's behind the protocol. It's attached to the protocol behind it in the agenda packet. And it doesn't have a agenda page number on it, from what I can see. The question that I raised with city manager, with staff, is maybe the way that we are currently putting out notices for contracts is outdated in our current internet society, and that we are not reaching the types of contractors that we choose or seek to wish. I did a real quick survey that's in your agenda packets. Everyone I contacted, with the exception of one contractor, said they didn't know about the contract opportunity. And then I heard back the next day from Ken's Glass Company.
Glass in Wairika, no.
Up in Wairika, and he said, no, he hadn't heard about it either. So of the 6 or 8 or 9 companies, only one got the word. So the question is, how can we be better in the future, regardless of the past? How can we better notify people in the future? If you look at 3.50120 contracts, sub A, sub 1, notices.
Can you read it to us, Tim,
Yes.
since we're having some difficulty?
Notices inviting bids shall include a general description of the project or item, shall state when the bid blanks and specifications may be secured and the time and place for opening bids, and shall be published at least 10 days before the date of opening of the bids, comma, at least once in a newspaper of general circulation printed and published in the city, and shall be posted in public places in the city that have been designated as the places for posting published notices.
If there's no newspaper, it says.
Yes, or if there is none, yeah. So basically, this old procedure that's been around for decades, or maybe a century or more, all it requires is publishing once in a newspaper, at least 10 days before opening of bids, and that's it. When I contacted the the various contractors in a very short survey, they said, no, we're not members of the Shasta Builders Exchange. They don't think any of the contractors here in Siskiyou County really are members of the Shasta's Building Exchange. There is no Siskiyou Builders Exchange, although some contractors have tried to get that started. What Wairika apparently does is they do go out and make courtesy telephone calls to let people know, oh yeah, we got a windows bid, or we got something else. Would you be interested? A number of other governmental agencies, according to Timberworks, list upcoming projects on CIPlist.com. And that's for cities or governmental agencies that have construction projects. So I'm suggesting that if we want to avoid the problem that we had with the Windows project, where we get only one contractor putting in a bid, and even then late, that we consider modifying 3.50.120. And a couple of suggestions would be, one, that we list our projects that are to go out to bid on CIPlist.com. Number two, that we keep a list of contractors' emails, addresses, and or telephone numbers to give courtesy notices.
I'm wondering, instead of looking at one specific paragraph of a document that you say is probably decades old, is it worthwhile to actually revisit the entire document and take a look at, or do you want to just do one paragraph at a time?
The document that I'm talking about is not the city council protocol. I don't think we need to look at that at all or change that at all in terms of getting notices out to potential bidders.
So let me clarify here, and then we'll go to public comment and then more council discussion. What I hear you saying, Tim, is that you are not wanting to discuss the appropriateness of reconsidering the decision we made last time.
Well,
That you are simply asking that we consider changing our bid process. Is that correct?
that is correct. And the reason for that is under 7.5.6 of the protocol, procedural motions. A motion to reconsider can be made by any member who voted with the prevailing side at the meeting during which the original vote was taken.
Only at the meeting.
No,
That's what it says.
no, it doesn't.
Mine says, and only at the meeting during which the original vote was taken.
Including any continuation of that meeting through adjournment to a time and place certain, or at the next regular meeting, unless intervening actions taken based on the original action make such reconsiderations impracticable.
Right.
So a member of the city council who votes with the majority can request reconsideration at the next regular meeting, as I did. And it would have been practical to have that vote tonight, reconsideration vote, but for the fact that the city manager chose to sign the contract with Selig after I made my indication that I wanted this on the agenda. He made a decision. It wasn't impractical at the time I made the request, but it became impractical after the fact, after he signed the contract and then notified me that he had signed the contract after I made the request for reconsideration. So it's a moot point to ask for reconsideration. That's why it's not on tonight's agenda. We don't need to change 7.5.6, because it has worked for a number of years. That's not the problem. The problem now is, how do we improve our notice of projects to would-be contractors? When I contacted in a very short period of time, a number of contractors that are in the agenda that said, no, didn't know anything about it, and yes, had I known, I would have liked to put in a bid.
Thank you. So some of this discussion has to do with roles of city council members and staff. What I'd like to do now is turn to public comment and ask if there are any of those of you in the audience who'd like to comment on this. Okay, seeing none, I'll then go to, do you want to go next, Paul? And
Sure.
then, and then, yeah, oh,
Just to clarify.
are you going to ask for clarification of Rod, or shall we do that now?
Go ahead, Rod. Yeah.
So, Councilmember Stearns mentioned CIPlist.com. That is quite a common method for us to put out bids. For the last at least 3 or 4 years, every single project we've done has gone through CIPlist.com. I think contractors become a member, just like they had with Shasta Builders Exchange. Now things are transitioning more towards the CIP list. The Windows project was put out 2 newspapers, 2 weeks in the Mount Shasta Herald. And it was also put on the Builders Exchange. That's before the last 3 or 4 years. The Shasta Builders Exchange was used exclusively before CIPlist.com even existed. So it worked for many, many years. I assume there's still a good number of contractors out there that are still members of the Shasta Builders Exchange, and a growing number of contractors are members of the CIP list, and so they should get notifications. I tried to get clarification today because I was under the impression, and so was our city engineer, that Shasta Builders Exchange also grabs all CIP list projects. And so they kind of work together. So in my opinion, the project was more than adequately noticed. All that's required technically is the newspaper. I ran it for 2 weeks. And then additionally the Shasta Builders Exchange. But admittedly, we are moving away from the Builders Exchange and moving more towards the CIPlist.com. Just wanted to make it very clear that we are currently using that, and a good number of our projects that we put out to bid also end up on our website. I'm not sure if this one did or not. Okay, so we do, that is another option that we certainly can do as well.
And Ron, I don't want to make this, my intent was not to make this criticism of what happened
Sure.
in the past.
Yeah, I just wanted
The
everybody to be
question
clear what
How
we do.
can we make it better in the future?
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul, would you like to speak?
Okay, let's leave that in the past then. I did have some problems with that, but I'm going to go on. I think that it's probably a good idea to revisit this and put it out to more sources if we can. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good idea. But I do know that people are going to cry spilled milk if we don't call every single contractor in the county about this. And that's the problem we would have with courtesy calls. It's going to be more of a problem if you miss contractor A3-4 and he didn't find out about it, and then he starts suing us because you made calls to all these other people, but you didn't make it to me. It's impossible to reach them all, but we can do a better job with reaching out there to other people in the media, on our webpage, in other sources, but we cannot call people with a courtesy call. I think Wairika is making a mistake because I think they leave themselves open to a lawsuit by doing that. Would be my opinion. I'm not an attorney, but I've seen a lot of lawsuits. And you leave somebody out and they're going to cry spilled milk, and if there's a couple bucks to be made, they're going to go after it. So that's what I see about that. So I think we can improve this method. I think that's not a problem. I think it's a good idea. And I think we need to move on from there.
So Councilmember Stearns has proposed, although not put in the form of a motion yet, that we use the CIP list. It sounds like we already do, consistently.
It's not in 3.50.120 procedures for notices.
Is the Shasta Builders Exchange in that?
No.
No, there's nothing in that. And every department head has their own process for extending bids out when they have projects come up. So,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
so what I'm hearing is that you are suggesting that we amend whatever that thing is to include requirement that we list building projects on the CIP list, even though we're currently already doing it. And you suggested we list emails. I just heard a comment from Mr. Engstrom that we not list emails because of the issues associated with missing anyone.
Mayor Mortar,
yes.
if I might make a point here, I believe we're talking about amending a city ordinance here, and we can't just by resolution amend the ordinance. I think we would have to set this for a hearing for an amended ordinance for first, second reading. I think the feedback from the council would be very good, so we could write it appropriately the first time and bring it back. So I think we should be careful about amending anything tonight.
No, my understanding is we are just having a discussion tonight.
Okay, fine.
Okay, through the chair. So, Mr. Angstrom seems to think that a direct mail, email list, call list is a poor idea because it could lead to the impression that we're favoring. It could lead to the impression that we're favoring certain contractors over others. So we have to just have a broad announcement of what we're doing. The question is it broad enough? I don't know. I guess I asked the city attorney, do you need to have specific techniques listed in this type of an ordinance, or is it, that's good enough?
I think the idea is you want more bids.
Right.
You want the word to get out. You want to comply with you want to comply with state law, which you've done, and then some. But an ordinance that gets more attention would be fine, and the CIT list would be one. I agree with Councilmember Enstrom about undertaking to notify people personally, because what's going to happen is you're going to miss somebody. But putting it on the website or any other list that's available to anybody would be encouraged. And there was discussion about calling people. I know most cities have a purchasing policy where for small projects, there's a procedure where you can call and notify people and try to encourage interest. But I wouldn't put that in your bidding procedure for the reasons that were mentioned.
And I agree, it doesn't need to be in the written bidding procedure, but I do think that we can have a better procedure to get out the word and get more contractors to submit their bids.
You mentioned talking to contractors. I'd be curious to see what they would recommend. I mean, this procedure is used all over the place and apparently works, but we didn't get a lot of bids, and it's in your interest to get bids.
And not surprisingly, if I may, what I was informed by the various contractors is they don't really read the newspaper.
Well, the other things, bids are affected by a lot of things. One, this wasn't a big project. Two, a lot of bidders don't want to work with public agencies. And three, if they're real busy, they're not looking to take on new projects.
Thank you. Barbara?
So the chair, just wondering, is there a potential here for a mini survey of our local contractors to see what, since the attorney mentioned it, what would work best for them? You know, maybe now is a time to put out the inquiry and see what would attract them, and if they do have issues with working with city government.
As an alternative, I might, because of the impact on staff time, I might suggest that we could, if we wanted to go the extra mile, we could send a letter now to the ones that, no, Muriel has, let me just finish my sentence and we'll go to you, Muriel. To the ones that Tim surveyed, and say to them, in the future, we would ask you to monitor the CIP list and the newspaper and the Shasta Builders Exchange. We cannot be responsible for notifying each of you individually. We would like to have your business, we would like to have you bid on it, but you need to be responsible. We request that you uphold your responsibility by monitoring these sites. That would minimize impact on staff and clarify responsibility of contractors who may or may not be hungry for jobs, but I think it would be an extra step that might be a good idea.
And there's another way of doing this, and that is for the city to maintain a list of contractors who are interested in projects. So they have to take that initiative to get on the list. And then once they're on the list, that notice can be sent out to whoever's on the list. That way, if somebody doesn't get notice from the list, they can't complain because they didn't get on the list, because they didn't take that initiative.
I would
thank you.
advise
I would
against that.
like to,
I would advise against that also. When you start going to strapping yourself with extraordinary measures, then you don't follow through and create a new problem. But I do understand this. You know, if there's potential bidders that have suggestions, certainly we should know what they have to think. Secondly, if
We should certainly what, John?
we should know what their proposals would be. If, you know, they're the ones that say, hey, you know, if you posted this on the billboard down at the Veterans Club or something, you know, I'd see it. Well, you know, whether we want to do that, that's another issue, but we would know. And the other thing too is that, you know, if there's some suggestions we should receive, staff will come up with a proposed ordinance change. That'll have a first reading and a second reading. And if anybody wants to come in and make changes, we'd be happy to hear what they had to say.
I'd like to go to Muriel now and ask that everybody get my attention before you speak so we can monitor the flow here. Keep it going, Muriel? Yes. Thank you, John.
My suggestion is this. We're developing a new newsletter that's going to be going out quarterly, and I would think that a section of that newsletter could be for upcoming events, certainly, upcoming projects, anything that would be of interest to people who have our business licenses, and other types of things like that, to where if we're trying to expand the word to those people, that if we have a specific place within that newsletter that would be of interest to particular types of contractors, that would be another way to get the news out and not have to say that you're specifically targeting particular businesses to the extent that you're showing some favoritism or those sorts of things. So just another way to do that. That's
Thank you. And is that why, Muriel, I noticed you shaking your head no at the suggestion?
Exactly. I think that any time that you're calling people up, you're giving, and it's coming from an official or somebody in the city, you're perhaps giving them an indication that they're going to be treated differently than anybody else on the street, and we don't want that type of thing to happen. Of course, we need to be transparent, so it would need to go to everybody, and if you miss somebody, it opens you up for liability.
John?
Through the chair, I just have one question to Rod. Rod, do you feel that the ordinance as written is good enough, or do you think it needs more specificity with respect to tools to make the announcements about RFPs? I guess what I'm getting at, do we need to go through an official procedure to change this ordinance? What's your opinion?
My opinion is this: we follow this, and then some. We do more than what's required. We can certainly take recommendations to, the newsletter, the website, and we can certainly do that. But as far as formalizing it in an ordinance revision, I wouldn't recommend that, because then we're locked in. We have to do that. As it is, I mean, everybody, I think we all want, as John stated, more bids. So I have no problem with taking a few extra steps, putting it on our website, including a newsletter, things like that that are certainly within reason and totally acceptable and really easy to do.
And if you don't spell out that you're actively pursuing getting a sufficient number of bids, that there's some language in there, a city staff could always say, well, I met the minimum requirement, right? But sometimes we go, well, it was fine, I met the minimum, that's what it says, that's what the city manager said. So you can always, the city staff can always fall back on that unless there is specific language that says we are constantly trying to improve our bidding process and always looking to adjust to use new technologies, et cetera, or whatever the system's going to, so.
Thank you. So,
Through the
as I read, yes.
ordinances oftentimes outlive council members and staff.
Right.
And I think it is beneficial to have an ordinance be current or workable for our future. So we may have kicked this around enough tonight, and we could perhaps ask staff to take a look and see if there might be some tweaking of an ordinance that they would recommend. That would go beyond the minimum that's set forth here, recognizing that current staff does that.
Yeah.
But again, current council members, current staff may not be here X years from now.
Thank you. As I understand it, we have do we have a motion and a second on the floor? We don't. Okay. Is there a motion to ask staff to evaluate wording for a new ordinance to bring before us on the bid process?
I would make a motion that staff, that council direct staff to take a look at 3.50.120 contracts, procedure for notice, and see if they would recommend coming back with some modified language that might assure greater notice.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Council discussion?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something that I mentioned last meeting about the availability of contractors. I have been trying to find somebody to do a remodel for $35,000, and I have called a lot of contractors. They said, let me do it next July. And that's the response I've been getting. So the reason I still stand behind the reason we didn't get a lot of bids is because legitimate, and I'm not saying the people you contacted aren't legitimate. I'm by no means saying that, but a lot of contractors are just too darn busy right now to do a bid for $25,000. And I stand by that because I have personal experience there. I can't find a contractor to do minimal little remodels right now, and it's tough. So I just wanted to clarify that's, I think, one of the major reasons we didn't get any bids is because of the nature of the industry right now. It's
Okay.
it's overflowing with business.
Thank you.
So,
Before the vote, I would like to just state again that, I'm not sure how clearly I've said it, that it's how this issue arrived on our agenda tonight, not so much whether or not we should look at the ordinance. That concerns me. I fully stand behind City Manager Pope when he decided to sign the contract based on the vote that we had the night before. As you know, Tim, it takes 2 council members or the mayor or the city manager to put something on an agenda. I don't believe that was requested of us,
No,
but
not in a reconsideration. If you look at
okay.
the section I cited, you'll see that is different than what you're talking about.
The standard protocol to get something on an agenda.
That is correct.
I guess that's a matter for interpretation, but okay. But But anyway,
But
so,
that's not
so
what-
let me
that's not what
just,
the motion is.
I understand that.
Okay.
I don't need your interruption, thank you. I give you a pretty long leash, Tim, to talk about whatever's on your mind. I ask for the same courtesy, thank you. What would have been appropriate, I think, is, had you had concerns, is to go to city manager and describe that you'd like staff to research the any additional contractors that weren't notified. And if it were a priority, as we've decided, as we've discussed, we have policy level work that the city council does, and we have staff level work that staff does. And I consider what you did, I can see why you were concerned about it, but I think given the agreements we've made about policy versus staff work, that it would have been more appropriate to ask Bruce if it was a priority to have his staff look ahead at this and then go from there, rather than do what you did, which has caused quite an impact at the staff level among many staff members. So I know you said we're not talking about that tonight, but I do want to go on record as someone who continues to be concerned about impact on staff of what many of us on city council request of our staff members, when it should be going through Bruce to decide whether or not what they've already got on their plates should be replaced with something else. So that having said, thank you for listening. Having been said, I'd like to ask for the vote. All those in favor of the motion that was presented and seconded?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, we have a... You know, I'm going to change my vote to no. Thank you. 3-2. 3-2 vote, the motion passes.
Under this section, under protocols, is there a potential for another motion under the subject of protocols? Or are we done with this agenda item?
Is there a second? Did you make a motion, Barbara, to have the whole thing looked at?
No, I was looking to make a motion. I don't know if I have a second yet or not.
What's the motion?
I'd like to move for the staff to look at the way that the council communicates with each other and the way the city communicates with the staff, with the council, to see whether or not there could be a more efficient way of communicating between us and between the city and the council.
Is there a second to Barbara's motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thank you all. I'd like to move now to item number, it says 9 on your agendas, approval of resolution for the library RFP. Juliana, may we hear from you?
So previously, we presented an RFP to the City Council regarding the library expansion. It does still reference renovation, but the renovations have been scaled back according to LTAC advisement, which would include only HVAC systems and ADA compliance. We did do an ADA assessment of the library, and we do have some things we can improve upon, and as a public building, we should always strive for ADA compliance. As far as changes, since the City Council has reviewed the RFP, it was referred back to LTAC. We did have a discussion with them, and they did present new concept proposals for the building as well as the site plan. As you'll see from the site plan, which I believe it should be attachment 3 to this, that we removed the parking from the area just to the west of that dry streambed wetland area. We're going to be working with the city manager, Pope, and I are going to be working with the high school to determine an appropriate parking situation, as well as look at other parking configurations, because that is a very sensitive wetland area. Taking the parking over there out would help significantly with environmental review. As far as changes to the conceptual building footprint, which is attachment number 4, LTAC has decided to leave the older library section very unfazed, except for the movement of the mechanical room, like I said, with the amendment of the HVAC system, which will function for the whole library. There were some offices in there that they've elected not to do just to save on costs. As far as the language of the RFP, it was pointed out to me that one of the dates didn't get changed on the page 5 or page 44 of your packets. That September 8th, 2017 should read the proposed October 27th date. So that was just a typo on my hand. If the council wants extra time for the submittals, that's more than welcome to do that. Pretty much we kept most of the language in here fairly the same based off of LTAC recommendation and Planning Commission recommendation. And I will open it up for questions.
Juliana, before, I didn't hear you
Sorry.
quickly enough. You mentioned a date. Can you refer to what that referred to again?
Sure.
Project
That's the
change.
date for submissions. So the date, it says September 8th, 2017 on page 44 of your package, page 5 of the proposal. It says September 8th. It should be October 27th. That was the original date when you first heard it. And we've since pushed back because we'd have additional speaking time. But if
Thank
you'd
you.
like to change that date, it's up to you guys.
Okay, questions of Juliana? Yes, Tim?
Juliana, on page 44 of the agenda packet, page 5 of the request for architectural services, number 8, work samples, submit 2 project designs that you feel are similar to our project, preferably for projects that have been constructed. Tell me about that and why.
Sure, that's a pretty typical practice that we do with other submissions. For example, we just had I believe it was our EPA grant with the brownfields. So we were looking for consultants for our brownfields administration for the Roseburg property. And we usually ask for 2 similar projects proposals to see how it gives us an ability to see how that firm approached a problem, what types of communications materials they're able to produce, which is very important for public projects. It also gives us an idea of the depth and detail of the proposals that they produce. We normally ask for 2. If you want to ask for more, or if you have more specifics that you want to see in projects, we usually just keep it up to the discretion of the submitter, what kind of projects they want to put forward. So ideally for this project, we would be looking at architects and engineering firms that have experience with libraries or public facilities, and that they would produce those public facilities or libraries that are similar in our case, which would be an expansion, as well as maybe some lead examples, because we do flesh that out in this proposal.
So if you've got a new architectural firm that hasn't done work with a library before or a public agency, and they don't submit 2 project designs, would they be disqualified?
They wouldn't be thrown out of the batch, they would just lose points in that area. So what we do is we use a matrix and we give points for each section that we're requesting. Most of the points are associated with the project work plan, project schedule, qualified personnel usually get some points as well. So they're not completely taken out of the running, but they lose points in that area.
And on page 4 of the request for architectural services, page 43, down there at the bottom of the top bullets, leadership in energy efficiency and design, lead practicing firms. I didn't see anywhere in the library renovation project where we indicated our desire that this be a lead project,
That was a recommendation by the Planning Commission.
that we take that out.
No, that we keep that we add that. So the LTAC did not prioritize any lead or sustainability efficiencies to the library, but when Planning Commission reviewed the initial proposal from them, they felt that this is something as a public building that should prioritize some way, but they didn't find it a requirement because we didn't want to limit the number of available submitters.
What I understand when I read this is that this is saying that architectural firms that have lead experience or design to lead get prioritized, but it's not a requirement. It doesn't say anything in here that the city desires this to be a lead project.
It does on page 2 of the RFP, page 41 of your packet, scope of work. At the end of that first paragraph, it says, actually, I'll read the whole sentence if you'd like. The City of Mount Shasta seeks a qualified architectural firm to develop architectural drawings and building plans based on public input and sustainable building practices. Leadership and energy efficiency design lead practicing firms will be prioritized. So that's in the scope of work. That was added later by the Planning Commission. You're more than likely, you're more than able to take that out if you'd like. But they felt that it would be important to, if it is a new building, it should be something that is sustainable and prioritized.
I agree with that, and I think I skipped over that sentence somehow or missed it. So if I can ask one more question. Again, at page 4, in terms of selection process, it says an evaluation committee will be comprised of City of Mount Shasta staff, City of Mount Shasta library staff, and may also include Library Tax Advisory Committee or a subcommittee thereof. My question is, because this is a city building and a city project, what part does the city council play in the selection process?
So traditionally what happens is the evaluation committee will go through a matrix that I talked about earlier, and then some of the other points that are added to the matrix are the selection criteria that you see from 42 to 43. After that is made, you will get the top rated by that matrix, and that's presented to you for the awardal of the bid. And you will have an opportunity to look at the other submissions if you so choose. So it's a traditional, like Rod's projects, where he awards a bid at the end of a project for that person to come in and do the engineering.
Well, typically when there's a road construction or a sidewalk, whatever, it's lowest qualified bidder, but this is design. So I do think the city council ought to have input into selection process, because this is more than just a road or infrastructure and lowest bidder. So I would like to have perhaps the 3 top designs.
I would advise against that, just because if a city council member is involved in the selection criteria, then you have to excuse yourself from the final bid award, because that's unethical to already basically have your opinion made before a final vote. And that's why we usually do it on the city side, as well as people who are not in that final approval process. One thing we do this for other things as well. So the brownfields that you just approved a few weeks ago, we did that as well. And we don't necessarily bid to the lowest cost. Cost is a factor in the matrix, but it's not the only factor.
Well, speaking for myself, I would like to have council make the final selection, because this involves design as well as other matters.
I believe we agree. You do get the final say. So it's once it goes through the matrix, it'll go to LTAC because the cost is coming straight from LTAC funds, and then they'll give an opinion on whether they're okay with that number or not, and then it comes for you for final approval. So you do pick the final architectural firm. You do get to look at all of that information.
So,
The way I heard you explain it initially was that we get presented with the selected design, and the city council can say yes or no to that selected design.
We're only picking the architectural firm. We're not deciding any designs. We're not deciding any final plans or anything like that. We're picking the architects to come in, because it's going to be about a year to a year and a half process to do the design, because we're expecting them to do public input. We're expecting them to look at previous studies. We're expecting them to present to some of our committees as well as the process goes along. So you have, I guess at this stage, we're just picking the firm, and you do have that choice.
and as I understand, there's a requirement that the contractor conduct, is it 3 public meetings?
I believe you are correct, a minimum of 3.
Right,
Or,
all of which would affect the ultimate design. of the structure. Are there other questions of Juliana or staff before we ask for public comment? Just questions at this point.
Is the council discussion after public comment?
Yes, it is. Any other questions for clarification? Okay, public comment. Are there any of you who'd like to comment? Please share your name.
I'm Evelyn Callis from the LTAC Committee and the Friends of the Library. Julianne has presented the materials that LTAC has reviewed and agreed with. I would only like to add that at the previous presentation, we objected to the presentation on the grounds that a significant error or misunderstanding was present in that it included renovations of the existing building. The reason we objected in part was that we had already accomplished almost all of those renovations. There remains only the change in the HVAC system and the ADA door installation. The plumbing, flooring, electrical installations, roofing, and painting have already been done with donated funds, Rotary funds, Friends of the Library funds, and tax revenue funds over the past 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. And have you been, the reason I'm asking you this is, have you been able to hear us this evening? And I ask this of you because after your last presentation, there was a letter sent to us encouraging us to improve our acoustics, because apparently many of you couldn't hear anything. And I'm usually very sensitive to signals from the audience that you can't hear us. So I'm wondering if there was I believe you signed that letter, and I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
I not
And this
only
is
signed
not
it-
part of your 3 minutes.
I not only signed it, I co-wrote it. I will have to tell you that the problem with the hearing by the audience is not the volume, it is the intelligibility. The distortion is such that about 3 words in 5 are not audible or not comprehensible. This has been the problem ever since you've had this audio system, and it persists, and I feel strongly that you should endeavor to change it.
So you're having the same issues tonight?
Absolutely.
Okay. And it's not our vocabulary?
It's not your vocabulary. It's not the volume. It's the intelligibility of the words that come across. The distortion is critical. Mr. Stackford,
and may I-
about only word I could understand that you said was irrigation. You said that very clearly, and that did come across very well. The rest of your comments and statements were not intelligible. Wasn't your fault.
It's probably my accent.
Okay. Thank you very much, Evelyn.
Say something.
Okay, Paul, can you hear me? How does it sound out there? Is it distorted? What would you say? How would you describe it?
I can hear you clearly from here.
She's the best. You can hear her the best. Tim, you're so soft.
Yeah, you are the worst, Tim.
Yeah.
Julian is difficult.
So
It's probably
Giovanni has a
more
comment.
speaker-
I just want-
speaker
I know
placement.
this isn't on the agenda, but this is important. Giovanni, you had a comment. Can you speak into the?
If you'd like for me to take a look at the sound system, I am a music education bachelor and teaching credential, and I worked on music tech for about 10 years at the recording studio here in Weed before it left. If you'd like me to take a look at the sound system to figure out some way to make it clearer and less muffled to the crowd, I would fully
Thank
be
you.
okay with doing that.
Did you all hear him just now? Yes, you heard him. Okay. Well, we have a contractor with whom we have worked to set up this system. Perhaps we can.
Well, I mean, we paid a bunch of money and still can't really understand what you're saying. Always.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just have, thank you very much. I hadn't heard about it. I hadn't heard it until these folks associated with the library sent the letter. I thought we had improved the soundability. So we'll just ask staff to look into it. Thank you. Okay. Oh, yes, Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Laverty. I'm the library director. And the only thing I would like to say is that this year and a half out just to get plans, I wish we could shorten that because we're maxed. So I just want to be on record of saying that. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone prepared to offer a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot. Yes, I forgot, Barbara. Yes, Rosalind. I didn't.
Rosalind McCoy, Mount Shasta. Again, we're back to how are we looking financially?